Hey guys, Basement Horrors here. Today I'm going to tell you gas station horror stories. These type of stories can really strike fear into you because a gas station is a very common location and we go there almost every day. Anyway, let's get right into this. Number 1. I was reading over some stories here, and after a while of debating, I decided to make an account so I could share one of my own experiences. It was the middle of the night, maybe 12 or 1 in the morning. I had snuck out to go get a bag of chips or something from the gas station a few blocks from my house. It was the middle of December, and it was snowing pretty heavily outside. For the record, I was 14 or 15 at the time. I've always been pretty small, at about 5'4" in height and 115 pounds in weight. I'm female, but I've always had short hair and kind of a boyish face. The gas station was completely empty besides the woman behind the cash register, who I remember had been far too busy filing her nails to pay too much attention. I had been picking through some chip bags to find something good when I heard a ding at the door as someone walked through the small gas station. I didn't bother to look to see who it was. When I finally found what I was looking for, I turned to head towards the refrigerated section for a drink, before seeing the person who walked through the door. It was a tall, thin man, maybe 6'2", with brown hair, a red trucker hat, and short, scuffy beard. He looked like he was in his late 30s or 40s. I was surprised that I didn't recognize the man. I lived in a very small mountain town, and everyone knew everyone. Oddly enough, he was wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt and shorts, despite it being freezing cold outside. His shirt and pants were covered in green stains, as if he had just been working on the lawn or something. He turned to me, smiled a toothy grin before moving away from the door to the refrigerated area so I could grab what I needed. I knew I shouldn't have seen anything wrong with this, but something about the grin and the way his eyes looked over me was already kind of a red flag. I've always been a very nervous and paranoid person. I moved in and opened the door, quickly grabbing a drink and backing off. Before I could turn away, I heard the man's raspy voice as he spoke to me. "Hey, you look familiar," the man said. He had a somewhat southern accent, which wasn't that uncommon considering where I lived. "Oh, yeah?" I responded, not sure what to say to him. He introduced himself as Thomas before leaning against the door. "Why is a young man like you doing out this late?" he asked. Again, I wasn't sure what to say. I wasn't a boy for one thing, but I didn't bother to correct him. I was just getting a snack," I responded, trying to inch my way away, trying to give off the hint that I didn't want to talk. Yet the man just trailed behind me. "Do you know my daughter?" he asked, cutting me off one of the aisles. "Well, who is your daughter?" I asked shakily in response. The man frowned, his eyes narrowing in my direction. He refused to tell me her name, claiming that he didn't want boys touching his daughter. I was confused by the sudden change of mood, so I didn't say anything else. I started making my way towards the register before he cut me off again. "Do you need a ride? It's cold out there," he said, getting incredibly uncomfortably close. At this point, I could smell the alcohol in his breath, and that made me very uncomfortable. "No, thank you," I said, trying to move around him. He insisted, and yet again I refused. I moved to try to push past him, bumping into a metal shelf. A can of chips fell off the shelf, hitting the floor. The lady behind the register looked up from what she was doing, noticing me and the man. "Are you ready to check out?" she asked me, glaring at Thomas. I nodded, and the man moved out of my way. I paid for the chips and the drink before thanking the woman and moving out of the gas station. But it didn't end there. When I began to walk down my snowy road, I saw the man get into his truck before getting out a minute later. I was already quite a ways away when he began walking the same direction I was. I would have called someone for help at this point, but I didn't have a phone at the time. I had quickened my pace, and eventually he turned around and went back. I don't want to think about what would have happened if the man would have kept following me. So, Thomas, I don't think that we should meet again. Number 2. A couple of weeks ago, my husband and I were road tripping across the U.S. At 3 a.m., we stopped at a rundown gas station in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska. By the middle of nowhere, I mean the middle of nowhere. The gas station was the only building in the area, and it was surrounded by empty fields. It was maybe 2 miles off the interstate. At 3 a.m., it was pitch black outside, and the lights of the gas station were the only thing illuminating the area. Since the gas station was closed, we were the only people there. My husband filled up the Jeep, and we spent a few minutes rummaging through our bags because I couldn't find my purse. Turned out I had left it in a relative's car in Chicago. Oops. After a while, an SUV pulled up next to us. The driver was a white man in his late 20s or early 30s. At that point, I was sitting in the passenger seat. My husband was about to get into the driver's seat. The man approached my husband and said, "I lost my iPhone here. Have you seen it?" Suddenly, a sense of dread filled the pit of my stomach as I noticed he already had a flip phone on his hip. I studied his face. While he looked unassuming, there was something off about him, something sinister. "I must have left it over there in that field," he said. The field was pitch black. "Can you help me look for it?" My husband already had his iPhone out with the flashlight on. He's such a good Samaritan. He started to follow the man. I whipped out my phone and texted him, "Leave." My husband immediately saw the text and looked at me. I must have looked terrified because he ran, jumped into the car, and we booked it out of there. As we were leaving, I looked back and saw the man get into his car. We drove for about 20 miles on the interstate to a rest stop and slept there. After a short time, my husband woke me up and told me to look out the passenger window. The man had pulled up right next to us. There were some empty parking spaces at the rest stop, and he still parked next to us. The creepy part is that we were at the very end of the rest stop, and the spot next to us wasn't even a parking spot. We had our seats down to help us sleep, so he probably didn't see us in our Jeep. We quietly watched him get out of his car, look over our Jeep, and walk into the building, probably looking for us. As soon as he entered the building, we snapped our seats back and hauled out of there. We drove for about 50 miles and found a hotel about 6 miles north of the interstate. We never saw him again. Number 3. I'm more mad than creeped out about this situation. It just happened about an hour ago. I'm visiting LA with my best friend. The rental was running on empty, so I stopped at the first gas station to fill up. I'm from New Jersey, and as you may or may not know, an attendant fills our gas for us. With that being said, I do not know how to fill my own gas tank. I pull up to the gas station, and the first thing my friend and I see is a dark, scruffy-looking man. I decide to wait until he leaves to get out of my car, but did he leave? No. Instead, he walks halfway toward my car, so he's about 10 feet away from us, and starts talking to me. I'm yelling at him through my window. "What do you want? Leave me alone!" My friend starts freaking out at this point, and I'm wondering if he works there, because he keeps pointing to my gas tank. He walks all the way to the window. My friend is starting to have a panic attack, and continues talking and signaling that he wants to get in my back seat. I respond with, why? And he goes on and says, "Because you're beautiful and I want to ride with you." He continues trying to get in my back seat as I'm yelling at him to get away from us. Then he starts asking for my number, and I politely tell him he can't have it. He reaches for his pants, and I honestly thought he was going to either pull out a gun or his junk. Eventually he backed off, but I was too afraid to get out of my car, and I drove to the next closest gas station. So, creepy guy at the gas station, thank you for making me appreciate living in New Jersey, where I don't have to exit my car and deal with freaks like you.